How well do you know the internet? Until 2 weeks ago, I thought I knew it pretty well. After all, I spend a good chunk of my day browsing Reddit and 4chan, and I'm always up to date with the latest memes and circle jerks. I've been a denizen of the internet since the early days of Fortune City pages and IRC channels, and a regular ever since. Then, about a year ago, somebody introduced me to the shadow web, a sort of secret layer of the internet that you will never find by Googling or looking up message boards. There are no inlinks from the surface web to the shadow web. And no, this isn't the deep net, in case you were thinking about that. Not some website with gore videos of freak accidents. I've seen those. I assure you this is something far more twisted. I never asked what his name was. He was a regular who came to the gas station where I worked as an attendant last year. Every time he came in, he would buy $20 to $50 of Ucash vouchers, which I assumed were for porn subscriptions. I think it was a combination of his beige polo shirts and receding hairline that gave off the creepy vibe of a pervert. One day, he asked for $300 worth of Ucash vouchers, and I made the mistake of raising the question, what for?
Have you ever heard of the shadow web?
I remember him asking me casually as he counted out $300 from a wad of $20 bills. I hadn't, so I shook my head. Then he looked through his wallet and withdrew a little slip, one about the size of a credit card.
If you want to find out,
he whispered. He leaned towards me and slid the piece of paper into my chest pocket. I gave him his vouchers, he left, and I never saw him again. Not long after, I left the job to return to school. It wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that I came across the old yellowy uniform with a piece of paper still in the front pocket. When I opened it up and read its content, I immediately recalled my encounter with the creepy customer. The piece of paper had instructions on it on how to get to the gateway of the shadow web. There were a lot of steps, some more sophisticated than others. Unfortunately, I was both tech savvy and curious enough to follow them. The first thing you want to know about this shadow web is that you do not want to go there. I've seen plenty of fucked up things on the web, but nothing comes remotely close to the things I saw on the shadow web. Thinking back, I should have noped the fuck out the instant I saw the front page. I don't know why I hadn't. Maybe something is wrong with me. When I got to the gateway page, which resembles one of those welcome pages that pops up when you use the free Wi-Fi at an airport or a mall, the first thing I noticed was the word corpse fucking. It was underneath a search field among 30 or so other words which I assumed were the most commonly looked up things on the shadow web, things like skinning and mutilation. That should have been my cue to X out. There were a lot of other things too, other than sexual content and graphic gore footage. Things like instructions on how to make do-it-yourself roadside bombs. Things like Craigslist for cannibals and people who wanted to be eaten by cannibals. Things like a marketplace to buy and sell stolen identities, either individually or in bulk. I spent almost an hour reading up on leaked war documents and diplomatic cables on a site called avenge.schweb. The website looked very retro, if you know what I mean. The layout had frames and each frame had its own scroll bar. When I found myself clicking on links without thinking twice, I realized I had become comfortable on the shadow web. Don't ask me how I came across this next website. Curiosity got the better part of me, and I clicked on things I shouldn't have. I'll spare you the actual name of the site because I know some of you will make the same mistake that I did, thinking that it can't be that bad. It can. When I got there, I noticed the Ucash logo at the bottom of the page, indicating that paid services were available. It was in fact a live webcam show, but you only paid if you wanted to be the director. Viewing was free. Beneath the live feed of the webcam was a login page to a chat room. It prompted me for a screen name when I clicked on the join button, so I entered ASDFASDFG, like I always do when commenting on Pornhub or X videos. As soon as I got past the login, a torrent of messages flooded the screen. Most of the messages were in English, a few in Japanese, and I think some were Arabic or Farsi. The number of participants in the chat room fluctuated between 150 and 200 people, but that's only the number of people who bothered entering the chat. I suspect many more were watching anonymously. The majority of legible messages were start or go, 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 or something to that effect. After about a minute, a man with his face hidden behind a hockey mask appeared on the feed. I remember him having dark brown skin and being really skinny, like starving Ethiopian skinny. Shortly after that, everyone was set on mute. Everyone except for one user by the name of Italian Goat, who I figured was the director of the show. That's when the screaming began. She was blindfolded and tied to a wooden chair with her hands behind her back. A bigger, darker man dragged her out by the hair until she sat dead center on my screen. I watched her try to struggle free from the ropes, but she was so tightly fastened that you could see the bruising. God knows how long she had been tied up like that. But finally, the bigger man took the blindfold off, and she stopped screaming. When she looked into the camera, she seemed to realize what was about to happen. She started crying and begging the two men in what I think was Arabic. Then a message popped up on the chat. Italian Goat. Lay her sideways on the floor. The director issued his first command. The skinny man saw the message and relayed it to the bigger man in their own language. Italian Goat. Kick her in the stomach. The skinny man continued with his translations. Italian Goat. Kick her in the face. The screaming got louder and louder. What the fuck was I watching? That was it for me. I reached for my cell phone, ready to dial 911. Italian Goat. Stomp on her tits. Italian Goat. Tell your friend to kick harder. I pay good money for this. I was in so much shock at this point that I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. The kicking went on for another 10, 20, 30 seconds. It seemed as if it went on forever. Italian Goat. Now slit her throat. When I read the last message, the churning feeling in my guts intensified. No, 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 no. I kept thinking, somebody stop this. I tried to type into the chat, but the input field was grayed out. The woman cried even louder when she heard the man relay the last message. Italian Goat. Wait. No, not yet. The skinny man held up one hand to signal his partner to halt. My breathing returned to normal for a second, thinking the woman was spared, at least for the time being. Then the director continued. Italian Goat. Take out her eyes first. The skinny man stared directly into the webcam. I couldn't see the entirety of his face, just his eyes, and the small patch of skin around each one. In his eyes I searched desperately for the slightest hint of hesitation. Please, put a stop to this, I prayed. But I kept the mouse cursor hovered around the close button in case they did not. And then the skinny man began typing, and a second screen popped up on the log. Admin. Another 500. My mind froze when I saw the number. $500. This woman was being tortured and possibly killed for a meager sum of $500. I was making as much every other week at the gas station, and I was barely making minimum wage. If I could offer $1,000 to stop this, I would. I would empty out my savings account if it meant saving her life. I would. I swear on my life, I'd pay anything to stop this madness. Italian Goat. Okay. I quickly shut off the screen before I could see any more. I wish my common sense would have kicked in earlier. I ran out to my yard, where I regurgitated about 2 meals worth of vomit. It had been a long time since I felt this sick from watching something. When I was in junior high, some friends showed me a clip from Rotten.com. It was the one where a man had his skull sliced in half by the rotor blades of a helicopter he was in the midst of repairing. And then, over the years, I've seen many more videos like that one. Enough that I don't get the urge to puke in my mouth anymore. But let me tell you this. Seeing live footage of a real person being tortured is stomach turning on a whole different level. When I was done spitting out the last bits of bile in my mouth, I heard screaming coming from my room. It was then that I realized that in my haste to turn the monitor off, I had forgotten to turn off the speakers as well. Her screams got worse and worse, until I was finally able to reach behind the desk and disconnect the speakers from the computer. The silence that followed was unbearable. It was as if by my own hands I had silenced her, killed her. I felt remorse such as I have never felt before. I killed her, I thought to myself again and again. I killed her. The feeling was unreal. I had to find out if she was alive. As I reached over to turn the screen back on, a voice inside of my head begged me to stop. I do not want to see what I'm about to see. But before I could stop myself, my hand had already acted. The image on the screen was an image that I will never ever forget. The severed head of a woman sat there straight across from me, both eyes missing from her respective sockets. The face, that warped, misshapen face, has haunted me ever since. Even now as I write this, I can feel her hollow eyes glaring at me from behind. I sleep with all the lights on, the TV on, but nothing helps. Right before I shut down the browser and reconfigured the network settings to access the good old regular internet, I remember seeing one last line on the chat line. It read, "Admin, thank you for watching. The next show will be in 1 hour." Number 4.
So I have been using technology since I was a kid. At 12, I learned how to write scripts and programs to hack into systems, and ever since I was hooked. Fast forward, I'm in my second year of my university now, and I'm now quite good at hacking, albeit somewhat cocky. Throughout high school, I made a lot of money hacking. People would come to me normally to recover their hacked social media accounts or to hack into their boyfriend's phone to read their text messages. I was known as the guy to go to if you wanted something hacked. Even my school occasionally came to me for help if some script kiddie shut down the school's website with a low-orbit ion cannon. Like I said, I made a lot of money doing this through high school. Halfway through my second year of university, I started getting bored of this. The money was good, but there was no thrill. One of my friends told me about this cool thing called the dark web. I had heard of the dark web before, but it never seemed that interesting. My friend told me how it was full of drugstores, weapons dealers, hackers for hire, and a bunch of fucked up animal and child porn. As a hacker and a stoner, the dark web seemed right up my alley. When I got home that day, I fired up my computer and did some quick Googling. With my vast knowledge of technology, it didn't take me long to get it set up with Tor and Tails installed on my computer. I sped through the hidden wiki finding most of the websites boring or dead. I texted my friend asking if he had any interesting link directories. He replied, "Here are a few of the ones I use." He sent me about 5 links. I decided to click on the second one and see what I could find. I scrolled through the directory for a few minutes. He was right about how interesting the dark web was. I couldn't figure out where to start, so I clicked on a chat room. The website looked old and primitive, but surprisingly there was one person online. I started talking to him. He seemed kind of shady, but it was better than scrolling through a bunch of dead websites. He said he had been on the deep web for a while now. Finally finding someone with a vast knowledge of what's on the deep web, I asked him if he had any interesting links. He sent me a link, then immediately left the website. I had no idea what was hidden behind the link. Looking back on it, oh god, I wish I hadn't clicked it. At the time, my own curiosity overwhelmed me, and I clicked the link without giving it a second thought. After it finally loaded, I was presented with a pop-up box. It said in red text, "If you don't know what's next, you're probably in the wrong place." There were 2 buttons, continue and leave. I instantly clicked continue, the biggest mistake of my life. It brought up a black screen page with a blood-red title at the top of the screen, The Freak Show. In the middle of the screen there was a chat box. A message popped up from someone titled Admin. He said hello. I said hello, interesting website you've got here. He replied, "Thank you. Are you here to view the show?" I thought to myself, what show? Out of curiosity I replied with yes. He said, "Since you're a first-time viewer, it will cost you 500 via Bitcoin in order to view this show. Future viewings are free." From all the money I had made hacking, I had enough to fuel my curiosity, so I went ahead and paid the 500. After paying him, I was surprised. I was giving a .zip file instead of a link. I had developed a custom-made antivirus that appeared to work well, so I risked downloading it. When I unzipped the folder, there were 2 files inside, an installer and a file named README. I started by opening the text file. It just said, "Do not send the installer to anyone, or else." I went ahead and closed the text file and opened the installer. It took about 15 minutes to install, which is strange for my computer. After installing, it opened up automatically. Across the screen it said, "Hello, welcome to the Freak Show. We use a custom program for our streams instead of Tor, due to Tor being too slow. We also need the extra security." After about 10 seconds, the screen changed to a countdown with a chat room next to it. At this point, I was starting to feel that whatever happened next would not be good. The timer displayed that there were 30 minutes until the stream started. I set my screen name to James Kent 157, not my real name, but I needed an alias. I said hi in the chat, but was ignored. I waited for 30 minutes, and after the timer hit 0, a video feed began. On the screen there was a guy in a mask with 3 people side by side in front of him. He started speaking with a voice changer to mask his voice. He said, "Welcome to the 26th stream of the Freak Show. We are happy to see all of our old viewers and a few new ones. We will now randomly choose who gets to pick who to kill first and how to kill them." At that point I realized I was fucked. I was in too much shock to close the window. I watched as the feed turned into a bunch of names scrolling up until it landed on someone named Gore725. I watched as he made his commands. First, stab him in the kneecaps, then cut off his fingers. After that, gouge his eyeballs. Then, when that's finished, drill into his stomach, and to finish him off, burn him with hot metal. I watched as the sicko did all of this. After everything was done, he said, "Now for the next one." After he said that, I snapped out and went to close the page. When I clicked on the X, it said, "Sorry, no leaving midstream." I was trapped. The wheel popped up again, but this time it landed on me. I couldn't respond. Instead, I typed in the chat, "You sick fucks, why are you doing this?" I was met with all the people in the chat calling me things like pussy, dumbass, retarded. I then said, "I'm calling the police." I shouldn't have said that. The owner of the site said, "Call the police and you'll be in next week's stream, Logan." That made my heart freeze. He knew my real name. He then pasted my parents' name, my address, school, age, and IP address in the chat. I immediately went to Task Manager to close Tor in the program. As soon as the Task Manager opened, it said not responding. The guy said, "Don't try that in chat." I pulled the plug on my computer without a doubt. My screen went black. I ran to my parents' room and told them what happened, and said we had to move. The police took care of everything and put us under police protection. Within a few months, they found the website owner. He was a 32-year-old man who lived off a combination of welfare and the money he made from his red room. It was many years later before I finally started using technology again. The dark web is an abyss of terrible things. If you're smart, you'll stay on the surface web. But I can't control what you do.
Number 3. I sincerely hope I can get as many people as I can to read this. Maybe, just maybe, if enough people read this, you can protect yourselves. It's too late for me. People can be so dumb sometimes, so ignorant. We take so much of our world for granted. We take and use things, and we don't even know how they work, or just how dangerous they really are. It's like electricity. So many of us quite literally would fall apart without using it every single second of every single day. But if we aren't careful, the same thing that seemingly gives us life is the exact thing that could end it. Touching an exposed wire, or spilling our coffee, or something as simple as pulling the plug out of your socket wrong could end your life. I was, or should say am, a fucking nerd. I'm not offended by the term. In fact, in many ways, I'm quite proud of it. People think you're smart, that you can do all sorts of cool things. If only I were smart. Maybe I could have avoided this. But the truth is, I couldn't have known any better. Why don't I just skip the theatrics and just tell you what happened? I got hacked. I must have deserved it, right? Just some dumb kid who went into the dark web and messed with the wrong guy. But that's not what happened. I was innocent. I bought my laptop from a perfectly good retailer with the money I earned over the summer for college. I was so excited when I got it. I planned weeks ahead. I scoured the aisles for the perfect computer. There were all sorts of models. Eventually, I found the one that was absolutely perfect. It was a blue HP laptop with 8 gig RAM, a quad-core processor, a 3 terabyte hard drive, a built-in webcam capable of 17 megapixels, and a sexy, sleek, smooth blue cover. Talk about a nerdgasm-inducing machine. Of course, I bought it, and let me tell you, nothing was wrong with the thing. The hack wasn't pre-installed or anything like that, so neither the manufacturer or store was to blame. I'll tell you why I know this later. I was absolutely infatuated with this marvelous machine, and the second I got to my house, I isolated myself in my room and assembled the beautiful thing. I hooked it up to charge, started up everything, got my account all ready and connected to Wi-Fi. Before I knew it, I had transferred all of my previous downloads from my old dinosaur of a computer into my new one. All of my apps, icons, and logos were moved, all backed by the power of a damn fine piece of silicone and metal. I started up my internet browser and started to surf the web. You might be thinking, this must have been where the hack came from. Perhaps I had accidentally encountered a virus at a porn site or something. But that wasn't it. The only sites I had visited were places like Facebook and Twitter. And even if I had been on a porn site, the chances of getting a virus on a porn site are less than that of a church organization site. If you don't believe me, look it up. Anyways, I was searching the web when my security installment, McAfee, went off. A maroon pop-up came up on my screen displaying the message, "Your firewall is down. Do you authorize this, or do you wish to activate it again?" I found this odd, but then again, it was a program that was trying to help me out. It didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. After all, I could just run a virus scan and find out if the program was faulty. I told you, I'm a nerd. I know my shit. I decided, better safe than sorry, and clicked on the enable button on the bottom of the pop-up. I didn't want any viruses being able to affect my computer. And that was that. Within a few seconds, the firewall was enabled and I exited the pop-up. I continued to surf the web and laugh at cat videos. You know, all the usual stuff people do on the web. After a couple of hours, my eyes had grown tired and I decided to call it a night. I turned off my computer and headed to bed. The weirdness didn't start for several days. It wasn't anything huge at first, just little things, like an added E to some names of the files I kept in my hard drive, or a window would close right as I had opened it up for no reason. I just passed them off as little bugs or mistakes. Perhaps I'd been tired when I typed the name of the file, and the sudden closing must have been due to browser malfunction. Then, one night, I was surfing Facebook, when I got a message from my mom. The dialog box came up, and I clicked on it to see what she had said. This is the outline of the conversation I had with her. Mom: "Hey honey." Me: "Oh, hey Mom, what's up?" Mom: "I just missed you, that's all." Me: "Well, we live in the same house. Why don't you just come into my room and say hi?" Mom: "Oh no, honey, I can't do that." Me: "Why not?" Mom: "I can't see you. Can you move a little closer?" Me: "What? What are you talking about?" Mom: "I want to see your face, honey." At this point, I was really weirded out. I brushed it off. Maybe she'd been drinking again. Me: "Mom, what are you talking about? You're in the next room. Just come in if you want to see me." Mom: "You want me to come over?" Me: Yes. Just stop and come into my room." Mom: "Okay, I will." I sat there at the computer and looked at the door, expecting her to come in any second to drunkenly kiss me on the cheeks and tell me how much she loved me, as was customary. I know, I'm a nerd. As I waited, and the time stretched on, I grew restless and looked around. I looked at the crack between my door and the floor, and noticed it was dark. How late was it? I turned my head and checked my alarm clock. 3:35 a.m. Was my mother even awake at this hour? I went to my door and walked into the hallway, and stretched my head out to check the hallway for any lights or noise that would indicate that my mother was awake. The house was silent and pitch black, with only the little LED lights of the kitchen and fire alarms to give light. I could hear in the distance, very faintly, the rough, choking noises of my mother and father snoring downstairs. I had a really uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I turned around and went back to my room. I sat back down at my desk and spun to face my screen in the office chair. My notifications had blown up. There were 300 plus notifications on my feed. I clicked on the Blue World logo and checked it out. My mom had liked every single one of my posts, pictures, and comments. Every single one. Even ones from 6 years ago. I immediately knew it had to be a hack. I decided there was nothing I could do about it from my vantage point, so I just warned my mom about it tomorrow and tell her to change her password. I clicked the Windows logo at the far left bottom corner of my desktop and selected shut down to turn off my computer. But it didn't work. It simply exited out after I clicked and the computer stayed on the desktop and didn't change. I was irritated at this point. Clearly, this hacker was a little more talented than I thought. I pulled up Command Prompt and began to browse through my computer's files. I was trying to find out where the breach had come from, but the black code box froze up. Without me touching the keyboard, I watched as the screen lit up with letters. The text box read, "Hello, son." I was seriously freaked out at this point. I pushed Ctrl-Alt-Delete, trying to shut the computer down, but a pop-up came up instead. A program like Skype had been turned on. The only difference was that every line, letter, and border was bright green on a black background, all in a really pixelated 8-bit format. It had a small dialog box similar to the kind you see in Chat Roulette. The screen where someone's face would be was black. I could see my face on the bottom screen, gently illuminated by green light. I looked scared shitless. I desperately tried to gain control of my computer. The keyboard was utterly frozen, and no matter how many times I pushed the power button, my laptop refused to turn off. My breath caught in my throat as I saw a masked figure appear on the screen, his appearance illuminated by the light of his screen. He had a red devil mask on and a silver hoodie with black gloves. He laughed and typed, "Seeing your faggot face get scared is fucking priceless." I was offended by the rude comment and this hacker's ridiculous attire. I flipped him the bird and angrily shouted, "Hey, fuck you, you prick." He sat with his hands folded over his stomach, and he laughed. His mask was smiling, an evil little red smile, and it shone like it had been given a fresh coat of wax. He then started to type again. "I wouldn't be saying that if I were you. I know where you live." Could he really find out where I lived? I shakily exhaled and asked, "How do you know where I live?" I watched the screen as the man in the hood lifted his head up and tapped his chin as if he was in thought. He scratched his head and he typed again. As he typed every digit, he only used his index finger, and he tauntingly pushed each key slowly, lifting his finger like he was a composer. 163-234-2309. That was my router's IP address. I glanced from the numbers back to the screen where he was. He had put his hands behind his head and kicked his feet up, as if he were relaxing. Suddenly, he put a hand in front of him, holding out one index finger, indicating he had more to type. He put his feet back on the floor and typed quickly, "Your address is 1567 South Mulberry Street, Topeka, Kansas. We all gotta die sometime, and I have to make money." He then reached underneath what I assumed was his desk and pulled out a gigantic surgical knife and a red cooler. Then he typed something for the last time. "I'll see you soon, honey." The color drained from my face. That had been my exact address. I watched as he got up from his seat and left his chair. No, he wasn't getting anywhere near my family. I pulled the plug from the laptop's charging point. My laptop didn't turn off. The screen only got slightly less bright. I furiously slammed my fingers across the keys, trying to make the computer react. The keyboard was still not reacting, and the power button was useless. I kicked my laptop off the desk and started to smash it against my knee. It eventually broke and stopped working. The screen splayed a rainbow of colors and the computer finally shut down. I didn't care about it. I had to wake my parents up and let them know what was going on and call the police. I rushed downstairs and tried to turn on the lights and find the phone. The lights were out. I flipped the light switch several times, but to no avail. They were all out. I frantically felt in the dark for the desk where we kept our family phone. I tipped over our coffee table and hit my head against the little lap stand we had it on. My head filled with sharp pain, but I tried to ignore it. I heard a clatter of plastic next to me, and I thought it may have been the phone. I grabbed for it while simultaneously rubbing my head. It was the phone. I raised it to my face and dialed 911. Fuck, the phone was out of reception. I got up on my feet and tried to find my parents. I felt around to find their hall, and I found their door wide open. I stopped at the doorway. What I found has been in my nightmares for weeks now. There they were, under the covers. Their heads were underneath the blankets, so I couldn't see their expressions. I entered the room and went over to the side of the bed. I shook my mother's shoulder. "Mom. Mom!" I shouted. I shook her some more and threw off the covers. Mom, you need to get up. I fucked up real bad." I froze in shock at what I beheld. My mother laid there, her eyes wide open and looking out in the darkness. Her throat had been slashed open, and blood was literally everywhere. She was naked. Her breasts had been cut off, and she had her entrails removed. My father fared no better. His body had been forced on its stomach, and he had long bloody cuts down his back. His neck was twisted so he was perfectly faced towards me. His eyes and nose had been cut off, making his face look like a bloody skeleton skull. He too had had his throat utterly flayed open. So that was it. That's what I heard when I poked my head out. They hadn't been snoring. They had been choking on their own blood. My eyes filled with tears. I covered my mouth in order to keep from screaming. And that's when I heard my room door being slammed open upstairs. Bam! I turned my head fast and looked around the room. The room was utterly dark except for a gentle blue light. In the corner of the room there was a glow of a computer screen. On the desk there was a cooler and a large surgical knife. The hacker. He had used my parents' computer to get into my mother's Facebook account. He had been in the house all along. I heard heavy footsteps coming down the stairs fast. I booked it down the hall out of my parents' room and ran down to my kitchen. I found the place illuminated by eerie blue early morning light. I ran to the back door and ran out to my neighbor's house. It took a while, but my neighbors answered their door. They were angry that someone was at their door frantically banging at 5 in the morning, but when I told them my story, they immediately let me in and called the cops. The investigation was short. What had happened was a deep web hacker had been able to fake a program to infiltrate my home network, and had been able to send a pop-up to my computer that looked just like McAfee, the security software. When I had gotten the firewall message and had clicked enable, what I had actually done was allow him full access to my Wi-Fi network. He found out all our passwords, our IP address, where we lived, what we liked, what pages we visited, what pictures we stored on our files. He was able to manipulate anything he wanted to. He even had access to our power grid through our thermostat. He had been able to track our IP address and had gotten our location. A couple of days later, he had snuck into my parents' room through a window while they were asleep, and had killed them. According to the police, he had been an organ trafficker for the black market. He had stolen my parents' kidneys, pancreas, and more. I was lucky to be alive. As for what happened to the guy who did this, he was never found. He must have snuck out when the neighbors called the cops. They have no idea where he is, and he's still out there, to this day. That's why I'm typing this. This is a warning. The computer you're using right now, it's like electricity. It seems harmless, but it's not. You wouldn't believe how much power hackers really have, and there's no way to fully stop them. They can breach your entire life without you being able to detect them. While you sit there, on your bed or at the cafe, they can take everything you own. You see your webcam? Look into it. Say hi and wave to them. They're watching you right now. But they can't be. Are you sure? How can you be sure they aren't? They can spy and never even set off your webcam light. Can you see them in there, waving at you? Yeah, go ahead. Cover it up with your thumb. But they can see you in other ways. That photo you liked on Facebook? That YouTube video you watched? Those naughty pictures you sent? And this story. It was just a distraction. Thanks for reading it. And letting me in.
Number 2.
This story happened to my friend on the deep web. I had a pretty scary experience too, but mine was a few years ago. This story happened to my friend just 1 week ago. For those who don't know, the deep web is pretty much the internet that isn't indexed by search engines like Yahoo, Google, Bing, etc. It can only be accessed by special software such as Tor. To give you some context, this is the friend that showed me how to get on the deep web. He has always been really fascinated with it. But after my horror story experience with deep web hackers, he pretty much took a long break from it. He didn't resume using the deep web until about a year after my story, but he didn't tell anyone. He would buy stolen Apple products, drugs, etc. About a week or two ago, he was buying some cocaine. It wasn't from the seller he normally buys from though, but it was really cheap, so he gave the seller his address and a fake email he used so they could stay in contact until the deal was done. He wasn't too worried. This guy seemed professional, and it was the same procedure for most of his purchases. My friend told him to ship it in a movie case or something that his mom wouldn't expect to have drugs in. This was probably his biggest mistake. He let the man know he was just a teenager, but my friend isn't the most careful of people. A few days later, his mom walks in the house and hands my friend a movie that he ordered online. He took it out and opened it, but inside there wasn't any cocaine, just a piece of folded up paper. He opened it up and read, "There's been a problem. Email me for the details." At the bottom, the man had left a new email for my friend to contact. My friend got on his email and asked the guy what the problem was. He responded, "Something has happened, and if I were to send it to you, we could both be tracked. Meet me at the elementary school at 7 o'clock, and we will just do it in person." The school wasn't too far away, so my friend told my mom he was staying the night at my house, and he headed off to meet the man. He called me and asked if I could be there with him, but I was really busy with my schoolwork, so I said I couldn't. I did tell him to take a knife or something though, just in case that things went wrong. When he got to the parking lot outside the school, he heard a car honking its horn. He saw it was a Jeep, but the plate had been covered up by duct tape, and the windows were tinted very dark. The man got out of his car and gave my friend the drugs, and my friend paid him. It seemed like everything went fine. My friend got in his car and sat there a bit in order to call and tell me everything went fine. He noticed when he hung up, the man was still there though. Why was he waiting? He didn't think too much of it and drove off. When he got to the first red light, he noticed that the man's car was right behind him. He was starting to get a little nervous, but kept driving. When he reached his neighborhood, the man was still following him, so he decided it would be a bad idea to lead him to his house. He instead turned into the neighborhood and took a whole bunch of random turns, hoping to lose the man. Eventually, he no longer saw the car, so he pulled the car into his garage and called it a day. That night, he noticed the sound of a car engine. He looked out his window and saw the man's car parked in his driveway. He got wide-eyed and snuck downstairs and peered through the window. Inside the car, the man was smoking a cigarette and talking on the phone. But in the passenger seat, he also saw a second man. The second one was a lot more suspicious looking, even more so than the shady drug dealer man. The second one had messed up hair, a trashy shirt, and while it was hard to see, my friend could also make out a scar from a massive burn on the side of his neck. He kept watching the two men until the second man began to look at the window more and more often. Eventually, he was just staring at the window my friend was watching them from. My friend decided he had had enough and was going to call the cops. He didn't care if he would get in trouble at this point. He moved away from the window and called the police, who told him to grab a weapon or something to defend himself with and wait for the cops. He had waited for about 5 minutes when he saw a figure quietly come out of his mom's room who had been sleeping. The man shut the door behind him and noticed my friend had seen him. The figure sprinted towards my friend with what looked like a knife raised in his hand. My friend grabbed a pot from the nearby table and threw it at the figure. It hit him in the face and shattered. The figure screamed and fell to the floor. My friend turned on the lights and saw the second man with the burn rolling on the floor. His face was covered in blood and shards of glass were sticking out. His right eye had tons of blood pouring out. He must have been hit pretty hard. As the man began to slowly get up, my friend grabbed a kitchen knife and drove it into the man's shoulder. Another scream could be heard by the man. He then got up and began to stumble over to the front door. Both men were caught on the spot, but my friend's mom had been killed. Her throat had been slit and she had 23 stab wounds, and duct tape covering her mouth. My friend was arrested too for drug possession, and his trial is coming up, but he lost his mom because of it, so I don't think he will be buying drugs from the deep web ever again.
Number 1. I used to be into some fucked up shit when it came to the internet, but now I can't even look at a computer without feeling sick to my stomach. That glowing window into digital infinity now feels like a gateway to hell. My obsession with the macabre started when I was 12. I would spend nights at my friend's house. His name was Paul, and unlike myself, Paul came from a very wealthy family. The kind of wealth that came with an indoor pool and a 4-digit key code. In all honesty, Paul was a bite-sized chunk of dog shit. Whenever he'd invite me over, the better part of my stay would consist of Paul showing me all the shiny new things that his parents had purchased him between the gaps of time separating my last stay. Look, don't touch, could have been his catchphrase. I only endured Paul's antics for the perks, and boy were there a lot of them. The weekends that I spent playing Pauper to the Prince were also weekends that I got to live the high life at Casa Defender, a wishful luxury if you grew up with penny-pinching folks like mine. When Paul wasn't jacking off his own ego, he was jacking off to Amber, his father's Barbie doll of a trophy wife. Fake tits, tight ass, and a birth date that placed her in diapers, right around the same time Mr. Fender was filing for his first divorce. The driving force behind Paul's lotion addiction has less to do with his stepmom's physical presence and more to do with her acting abilities. That's because before Amber met Paul's father, she was a certified spank tape starlet with a body of work that encompassed over 50 titles. It was an admirable trait for someone who had just turned 21. After meeting her future husband during an intoxicated romp through Vegas, Amber turned her back on a life of gangbangs and gag suppression techniques. Instead of fucking multiple guys for money, she'd only have to fuck one. Paul told me how he accidentally discovered the details of Amber's former life when he found a collection of X-rated movies hidden away in his father's closet. Every single one of the VHS tapes displayed Amber in dozens of explicit positions, performing every sex act imaginable. Paul hit the jackpot. Being the rich bastard that he was, his bedroom came complete with a big screen TV and entertainment center. In the following months, he had cycled through nearly all of the titles. He'd wait until everyone in the house was asleep, then fire up the VCR. I'd only ever see brief snippets of the opening credits before he'd shove me out the door into the dimly lit hallway. Like clockwork, he'd lock the door a few seconds after I was out, leaving me to wander the quiet house until the door was unlocked again. He could have stayed in his room for all I cared. Any time he was playing with himself meant he didn't have to come play with me. The last night I spent at Paul's had gone pretty much according to schedule. By midnight, I'd resumed my routine of exploring the house while Paul continued, turning his room into an abstract painting. I had only made it halfway down the hall when the door to Paul's room unlocked, then opened. Not long after, Paul emerged with a wide-eyed blank expression. I tried to speak to him, but he wouldn't answer. He just continued walking past me as if I were invisible. He had only been a few feet past me when he started screaming. I know it couldn't have been that long, but in my memory, the scream seemed to last for hours. First, the live-in maid showed up to find out what was wrong. Then Paul's father came down the stairs with his confused-looking stepmother. Nothing could be said to calm Paul down. He just continued to scream. During the commotion, I slowly walked into Paul's room where the TV was still on, set to VCR mode, only the tape had stopped. After a moment of hesitation, I pressed rewind and the VCR buzzed until the tape quickly stopped with a loud click. I could still hear Paul screaming in the distance while his father tried desperately to reach him. My finger hovered over the play button and then pressed it. The video was recorded in a foreign country, probably Mexico because I instantly recognized the language as Spanish. A man was speaking to a group of dangerous-looking locals. After coming to an agreement, the man handed the leader of the group a thick wad of American dollars. As the man turned toward the camera, smiling, I knew without a doubt that it was Paul's father. The video jumped forward to show a Mexican man on his knees, begging in Spanish while Paul's father stood behind him with a pistol pointed at the back of his skull. Before the Mexican man could say anything else, the trigger was pulled. Blood and brain coated the sandy ground. I was so entranced by what I had just seen, I didn't hear Paul's father as he entered the room. I looked up at him as he glanced at the TV, wincing with a flash of recognition before looking back down at me with guilt burned into his face. Paul's father personally drove me home that night. He gave me $200 and told me to keep my mouth shut about what I had seen. I never saw Paul again after that night. I had lost a friend, but I had gained a fascination. I wasn't afraid of what I had seen on that video. I felt excited somehow, turned on even. It wasn't in a sexual way. It seemed more akin to a light bulb switching on. What was once hidden in the darkness suddenly became visible. The same could be said about the inner workings of a young mind. At that point, I could have cared less about the why. That's because I was honed in on the how. As in, how would I be able to see more? As I grew up, challenging my extreme taste was almost a hobby. Snuff films, suicide videos, body mutilation, fringe pornography. I was pretty much a jack of all trades when it came to shit that you wished you could unsee. Now, you can't throw a rock without hitting some YouTube knockoff overstuffed with questionable video content. Back then, I was on the ground floor when it came to navigating the sketchy side of the internet. I would spend hours doing the online legwork, searching dozens of forums, chatting with weirdo after weirdo, until I got pointed in the right direction. There was something about putting in the work that made those inevitable discoveries so enjoyable. I endured mind-numbing stretches of time at the mercy of dial-up and faulty connections, but with a little luck and a lot of patience, I began to amass a digital collection that would only evolve with the functionality of the internet. Dial-up gave way to DSL, and DSL gave way to high-speed cable. When it was all said and done, my specially built hard drive contained over 2,000 files, all meticulously organized by type and rating. Yeah, I had my own rating system. Under the name and info of every video, there would also display a series of black stars that numerically ranged from 1 to 5. 1 star, astoundingly meh. 2 stars, so-so. 3 stars, interesting. 4 stars, thoroughly fucked up. Over time, I managed to condense the collection down to mostly the good stuff, nothing but 3 and 4 star ratings. However, in all my days of surfing the filth wave, I never encountered a video that I felt deserved 5 stars. My nightmare-inducing hobby would end when I met Kate. I wasn't in the market for a girlfriend, but she just sort of clung to me. What started as a college fling became a 5-year relationship that ended in holy matrimony. We had only been living together for a month when she stumbled onto the collection and almost had a brain aneurysm. To this day, I don't know why the stuff wasn't password protected. I thought personal boundaries were a thing. Apparently, she didn't get the memo. After crying in her bedroom, with the door locked for 2 hours, Kate gave me a simple ultimatum.
Either your fucked up videos go, or I do,
she would say while wiping her still puffy eyes. The things we do for love. Deleting those videos was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. Jump ahead 2 years into the world of marital domestication, and things were surprisingly good. Kate and I made a pretty cute couple. It was a strange new life that consisted of dinner parties, double dates, and husband-wife Netflix binging. After a lengthy withdrawal period, my dark obsession faded back into the shadows. But like any good addiction, there's always that thing waiting around the corner to trigger a relapse. I was on my lunch break when my coworker Jerry started ranting passionately about the hidden mysteries and unspeakable horrors of the deep web. I usually ignored Jerry when he talked, but that day, I couldn't have tuned him out if I wanted to. Of course, the sad son of a bitch hadn't actually gotten on himself. Like any good millennial, the bulk of Jerry's opinion had been formed based on a fistful of YouTube top 10 videos. Even so, I couldn't help the feelings of intrigue that began to form in the pit of my stomach, causing me to abandon the majority of Kate's world-famous tuna salad sandwich. While I wasn't completely ignorant to the existence of the deep web, the concept had only become popular in the last few years, and from what I understood, it required skills far beyond my basic computing abilities. According to Jerry, that wasn't true. All it took was a decent internet connection and a web browser so that you could download a program called Tor. I was facing the weekend to myself. Kate would be heading out of town to a fertility clinic, conveniently located 5 hours away. She'd use the remainder of the time as an excuse to pester her sister who lived only 30 minutes away from the clinic. Only thing I failed to mention at this point would be Kate and I's struggle to have a baby. Of course, when I say us, I really mean her. While it was a fact of life that she was unable to get pregnant, I found it hard to make myself care. I never wanted kids, even though I never told Kate that. She made me get my sperm checked out, and when my little swimmers came back with a perfect bill of health, the fault would lie with Kate. It was a fault that she couldn't seem to look past, no matter how much I tried to help sweep said problem under the rug. Kate spent countless sleepless nights researching infertility treatments until she discovered the out-of-state clinic. I was shocked at the time when she made no attempt to drag me along with her.
It's just a consultation.
She said.
No need to get your hopes up.
In what seemed like a snap of a finger, I was home alone for the first time in years. I fucked around for the majority of the first day, walked around in my underwear, watched porn, and downed half a case of beer that didn't have the word light across the box. It was on the second day that I remembered Jerry's deep web speech at work. This got me curious. I watched a brief YouTube tutorial on how to access the deep web and was shocked just how simple everything was. I downloaded the Tor program. The whole thing worked as its own special browser that used a number of IP addresses to bounce through so that your computer's actual location wouldn't be traced. At least that's how I think it worked. The majority of pages on the deep web aren't indexed, so to access them, you have to find a page containing links and info. I went through a page called the Hidden Wiki. It was a collection of pages indexed by category. To be honest, nothing really jumped out at me as fucked up, unless you counted the insane amount of kiddie porn sites that were casually listed as if shit like that was commonplace. The deep web is a pedophile's amusement park, and while I prided myself on my debauched personal tastes, the concept of child pornography has always made me sick. Aside from the copious amounts of child porn, the listings were populated with hacktivism sites, as well as a plethora of Bitcoin-accepting vendors that specialize in everything from illegal drugs to military-grade firearms. I scoured the rest of the Hidden Wiki, only finding dead links and pages with misleading titles. As I sat at the desk, glued to the monitor, I found myself utterly bored. And yet, there was this nagging urge to pull more from the tangled ball of yarn. From the countless stories that traveled the surface internet, the deep web was supposed to be a place of nightmares. If you asked for my opinion during those frustrating moments, my summary would have been simple. Unimpressed. The hours flew by, and I continued stumbling from site to site. By that point, I had come across this list of unlisted pages. The list contained over 50 onion links, and clicking every one was a crapshoot. Of the 50 plus, I had gone through nearly all of them. Every click was like playing Russian roulette. There was a page that displayed a handbook for pedophiles. It was the Wild West, and the fucking kitty diddlers had no problem laying claim to their territory. There was a page that showed you how to make a bomb from items found around the house. There was a page that literally was nothing but a continuous repeating animation of a spinning dildo, a populated social network for people who like fucking horses, and a white supremacist recruitment page, jam-packed with propaganda about a supposed race war that was lingering around the corner. The last link shot me over to a chat server. Nothing fancy, it looked like the kind of thing you would have seen in the AOL days of the internet. I came up with a nickname and logged onto the server. There weren't that many people active, and what individuals I did try to talk to either ignored me or logged off altogether. All but one. I hooked up with a fellow traveler that went by the nickname King Nomad. The following is how our conversation went. What's up?
Looks like someone's got that new car smell.
Huh?
What's up? You sound like a fucking tourist. Let me guess. You read an article on BuzzFeed about the deep web, and your little dick got hard at the idea of being naughty for a change.
You kiss your mother with that mouth?
Only when she says, please.
So I'm new. Why? Is that a deep web no-no?
Careful, little piggy. Not all wolves here huff and puff.
What's that supposed to mean?
If you're looking for an adventure, start a Tumblr account.
I'm looking for videos.
Sorry, Ice Cream Man, but I don't do guided tours of Sesame Street.
I'm not into kitty shit.
What are you into?
Violent stuff. Snuff, necro, fucked up BDSM, torture. You know, all the parts of a balanced breakfast.
You're funny. Sure those eyes aren't bigger than your stomach?
I have a healthy appetite. He sent me a link. What is it? King Nomad didn't type a response. A few seconds after I sent the message, I watched as the anonymous individual's nickname vanished from the server. I was hesitant at first to what the link would lead to. Was it a point in the right direction? or some virus-laced prank to punish me for being a newbie. Fuck it, I said to myself as I clicked the link. What I saw next was an all-black screen with a cluster of red text in the middle. Satan's sluts. His gifts are boundless, their flesh is currency. Tread carefully, for there is no God here. I clicked enter and the screen shifted to display another box of text. The whores of Eve will bend the knee and whisper in the dark. The master then shall grant the wish and tear their soul apart. Scrolling below the fucked up rhyme, I saw pictures. Dozens and dozens of pictures. All of them black and white, all of them women. The many images were arranged in a condensed grid that allowed you to take in the full scope of just how many were up on the screen. Hovering the pointer over each picture caused the image to expand, giving you a detailed look at every entry. Under every picture was a name and a number. The diverse group of women was made up of every conceivable ethnicity, color, and body type, and while the women's outward appearances provide them with physical distinction, the pictures would share another connecting thread. Every one of the women appeared to be roughed up and battered, and completely nude. All of them were forcing a blank, emotionless smile, while their uncovered skin showcased an alternating mesh of bruises, scrapes, and scratches. At first, the patchwork of black and white pictures appeared to be composed of strangers, but as I clicked from woman to woman, expanding picture after picture, the unrecognizable soon became familiar. Some of the women were actresses, while others turned out to be chart-topping pop stars and famous YouTube personalities whose number of subscribers ran upwards into the millions. One of the women looked just over the cusp of 18. She was Asian. She was also sporting a busted bottom lip. The name underneath read, Karen Matsu. Her face wouldn't have garnered a second thought if I hadn't recently watched her on TV win the USA a silver Olympic medal in rhythmic gymnastics. As I glanced downward, my eyes widened as they made their way to the bottom corner of the screen. There was a row of small clickable numbers, indicating that the page I currently viewed was just one page in a digital booklet. The page number started from 1 and ended with 47. A gut feeling led me to believe that 47 was just the halfway point. Before I would be able to click anything else, a black box appeared on the screen, accompanied by the words, "Live feed in progress. Would you like to view?" My hand twitched with an involuntary spasm as I directed the arrow-shaped pointer toward the yes button and pressed down. The rows of black and white pictures were replaced with one single image. I was looking into an empty room. The rugged enclosure looked like it was chiseled from solid rock a long, long time ago. The jagged sections, strange curvature, and uneven dirt floor exposed the likelihood that the visible location wasn't part of a building, but a hollowed-out cave. Flames flickered from the ends of 4 medieval torches, held in place by an iron sconce bolted in the 4 corners of the room, serving as its sole source of light. The minutes that passed seemed like an eternity, until 4 figures entered the room. They wore flowing white cloaks, their features obscured by the attached hood. At the center of these hooded white figures was a single person, shorter and thinner than the surrounding 4. The center figure was also covered from head to toe in a cloak, but instead of white, the lone individual was garbed in crimson red that stood out even more from the room's lack of color. One of the white hoods broke from the near-perfect formation and stood face to face with the mysterious person in red. The figure in red pulled back the hood, exposing the concealed identity. All the air rushed out of my body at once, because there was no confusing the thin features that made up the woman's small face. I shook my head and wiped my eyes in an attempt to rid myself of anything that could have obscured my vision, but when I looked back at the screen, she was still there. Kate. My Kate. My wife. Frantic thoughts burned holes into my brain. My mind raced through scenarios involving Kate getting kidnapped or worse. Then, like a shifting water current, I began humoring the possibility that what I was witnessing was the byproduct of some advanced hallucination that had suddenly taken over my vision. I glanced back at the screen, only to once again lock eyes on my wife, her form still hidden under the baggy cloak. As much as I wanted to pick up the phone and dial Kate's number, some invisible force held me in place, forcing all my attention in the direction of the footage. The white hood unfastened a latch near Kate's neckline, instantly causing the crimson cloak to fall from her body. My wife stood between the hooded figures with nothing to show but her bare flesh. The image of Kate's naked body shouldn't have been a revelation, but I could see the subtle changes across her glistening skin. She was flushed, and her nipples stood firm and erect, the same way they always got when she hit the peak of sexual arousal. As if directed by an inaudible command, the other 3 white hoods moved from their stationary position. The 3 suddenly took hold of Kate, turning her around so that her exposed back faced the 4th hood. The 4th hood drew a small knife and began to carve a small strange symbol at the base of her tailbone. Kate winced, then eventually screamed out. None of the 3 hoods would loosen their grip until the 4th completed the task. Now released, Kate got back to her feet. Blood ran down her right leg as she stood face to face with the 4th hood once more. While the footage was low quality, the sound radiated from the computer speakers in crystal clarity. So clear, it allowed me to hear the detached white hood speak in the deep tone of a detached older man. "You must give yourself fully, and you will be rewarded," the hooded figure whispered. Kate nodded, and the hoods began to chant in a language that I'd never heard before. They chanted loud. They chanted in unison. The repetitive sound went on for a few minutes until a loud roar echoed through the stone walls. All 4 hoods scattered to different corners of the room, placing their heads to the ground while still continuing to chant. And that's when it entered the room. It stood over 7 feet tall. The top half resembled a muscular man, with leathery gray skin stretched across a barrel-chested frame. The bottom half was covered in thick matted fur. The creature didn't have feet. It had dark brown hooves, clanking as the hideous monster moved further into the room. Of all the nightmarish imagery, what chilled me to my core was the thing's head. Between 2 massive shoulders sat the unnaturally large head of a goat. 2 bone, sharp horns extended from his forehead. The front half of his face was long and exaggerated, a molded perversion, stretching beyond the physical limits of nature. Between a gap of rotted teeth hung its filthy black tongue. The deteriorated organ dripped discolored saliva into a puddle on the floor as it eyed Kate hungrily. Kate walked up to the creature, eerily unafraid, and kissed it. My stomach turned inside out as Kate and the creature embraced each other in a sexual fury. She jumped up, straddling the monster as it grabbed a fistful of hair and yanked her head back. The creature licked her neck, setting off a chain reaction of pleasurable moans from deep within Kate. Then it looked at me through the screen and smiled. I blacked out after that. When I came to, the computer screen was just displaying the blank white image of a dead Link. I hit the refresh button, but nothing happened. Then my mind flashed to my wife. I picked up the phone and dialed Kate's number, only to get her voicemail. I dialed again and again until she finally picked up.
Is everything okay?
Kate said in her normal tone. My mouth had turned to cotton, but I eventually managed to get the words out. I just saw...
Just saw what?
Kate asked, confused. Are you okay? I said quietly as my hand sweatily gripped the base of the phone.
Yeah,
she said.
I just got on the highway. I'll be back for dinner.
And she was back in time for dinner. I hugged her like we hadn't seen each other in years. I looked at her and she looked back at me, and everything seemed fine. It seemed better than fine. She seemed better than fine. She was practically glowing with excitement. Instead of the usual at-home meal fare, we went out that night. Even though I tried to act like my normal self, my mind couldn't help but replay the video footage of her and that monster. How it kissed her. How she kissed it back. How she fucked it. I kept asking myself if it was real, or if I had imagined the entire thing.
I'm pregnant,
she exclaimed, with the enthusiasm of a human megaphone. She went on to explain that it had been some kind of miracle. She found out when she went to the clinic. She told me she explained more in detail after she came back from the bathroom. As she got up from the table, her shirt lifted slightly, exposing a small patch of skin between the fabric and her jeans. I caught a glimpse of a circular bandage covering a small area near her tailbone. I lost my appetite that night. It hasn't come back since.